Hello there. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another reading of Rudyard Kipling's Kim. We're coming to the end of the book now, and I've been thinking a little bit about the storyline and where we've arrived at, and how interesting and complicated it's got. And so, yes, it's got very interesting, very complicated, and just to summarize where we are, I suppose, we've got the last 3 chapters to go, and I imagine it's all going to come to a head, as these stories often do, but it's like Kim's living a dual life, and he's got 2 options that he can take. I've never read the book, so I don't know the end, and I don't want any spoilers in the chat, but he's ultimately got these 2 lives. He's an English boy who's grown up in India as a native, if you like. He is involved with Creighton Sahib and Mahbub Ali, who are like spies, I would say, for the government. And he's also got his friend, the Lama, who he's his chela, and that's his spiritual sort of dimension. So there's all of these different facets, aspects, and dimensions of young Kim's life. And well, I suppose we are going to find out over the next few readings what direction that takes, and yeah, where it all ends up, whether he's off wandering with his Lama, whether he works full-time for the British government, or whether he's off spying for some other agency or other. We will find out, no doubt, over time. And if you've enjoyed Kim and are looking forward to the more readings, will likely be of more of a Gurdjieff lens moving forward, please consider liking the video, subscribe to the channel, share the show, and if you enjoy listening to these amazing readings, you can sign up to the app. But for now, this is chapter 13, and the chapter quote says, "Who hath desired the sea, the immense and contemptuous surges, the shudder, the stumble, the swerve, ere the star-stabbing bowsprit merges? The orderly clouds of the trades and the rigid roaring sapphire thereunder, unheralded cliff lurking floors and the head sails, low volleying thunder. His sea and no wonder the same, his sea and the same in each wonder, his sea that his being fulfills, so and no otherwise, so another no otherwise hillmen desire their hills." Who goes to the hills goes to his mother. They had crossed the Siwalik sand, the half-tropical dune, left Missouri behind them, and headed north along the narrow hill roads. Day after day they struck deeper into the huddled mountains, and day after day Kim watched the Lama return to a man's strength. Among the terraces of the dune he had leaned on the boy's shoulder, ready to profit by wayside halts. Under the great ramp to Missouri he drew himself together as an old hunter faces a well-remembered bank, and where he should have sunk exhausted, swung his long draperies about him, drew a deep double lungful of the diamond air, and walked as only a hillman can. Kim, plains-bred and plains-fed, sweated and panted, astonished. "This is my country," said the Lama. "Besides such zen, this is flatter than a rice-field." And with steady driving strokes from the loins he strode upwards. But it was on the steep downhill marches, 3,000 feet in 3 hours, that he went utterly away from Kim, whose back ached with holding back, and whose big toe was nigh cut off by his grass sandal string. Through the speckled shadow of the great deodar forests, through oak feathered and plumed with ferns, birch, ilex, rhododendron, and pine, out onto the bare hillside, slippery sunburnt grass, and back into the woodlands, couth again, till oak gave way to bamboo and palm of the valley, the Lama swung, untiring. Glancing back in the twilight at the huge ridges behind him and the faint, thin line of the road whereby they had come, he would lay out with a hillman's generous breadth of vision fresh marches for the morrow, or, halting in the neck of some uplifted pass that gave on Spiti and Kulu, would stretch out his hands yearningly towards the high snows of the horizon. In the dawns they flared windy red above stark blue as Kedarnath and Badrinath, kings of that wilderness, took the first sunlight. All day long they lay like molten silver under the sun, and at evening put on their jewels again. At first they breathed temperately upon the travellers, winds good to meet when one crawled over some gigantic hog's back. But in a few days, at a height of 9,000 or 10,000 feet, those breezes bit, and Kim kindly allowed a village of hillmen to acquire merit by giving him a rough blanket coat. The lama was mildly surprised that anyone should object to the knife-edged breezes which had cut the years off his shoulders. "These are but the lower hills, Chela. There is no cold till we come to the true hills. Air and water are good, and the people are devout enough, but the food is very bad," Kim growled, "and we talk as though we were mad, or English. It freezes at night too. A little maybe, but only enough to make old bones rejoice in the sun. We must not always delight in soft beds and rich food. We might at least keep on the road." Kim had all plainsman's affection for the well-trodden track, not 6 feet wide, that snaked among the mountains, but the lama, being Tibetan, could not refrain from short cuts over spurs and the rims of gravel-strewn slopes. As he explained to his limping disciple, a man bred among mountains can prophesy the course of a mountain road. And though low-lying clouds might be a hindrance to a short-cutting stranger, they made no earthly difference to a thoughtful man. Thus, after long hours of what would be reckoned very fair mountaineering in civilized countries, they would pant over a saddleback, sidle past a few landslips, and drop through forest at an angle or 45 onto the road again. Along their track lay the villages of the hill folk, mud and earth huts, timbers now and then rudely carved with an axe, clinging like swallows' nests against the steeps, huddled on tiny flats halfway down a 3,000-foot glissade, jammed into a corner between cliffs that funneled and focused every wandering blast, or, for the sake of summer pasture, cowering down on a neck that, in winter, would be 10 feet deep in snow. And the people, the sallow, greasy, duffel-clad people with short, bare legs and faces almost Esquimaux, would flock out and adore. The plains, kindly and gentle, had treated the lama as a holy man among holy men, but the hills worshipped him as one in the confidence of all their devils. Theirs was an almost obliterated Buddhism, overlaid with a nature worship fantastic as their own landscapes, elaborate as the terracing of their tiny fields, but they recognized the big hat, the clicking rosary, and the rare Chinese texts for great authority, and they respected the man beneath the hat. "We saw thee come down over the black breasts of Ewa," said a beta who gave them cheese, sour milk, and stone-hard bread one evening. "We do not use that often, except when calving cows stray in summer. There is a sudden wind among those stones that casts men down on the stillest day. But what should such folk care for the devil of Ewa?" Then did Kim, aching in every fibre, dizzy with looking down, footsore with cramping desperate toes into inadequate crannies, take joy in the day's march. such joy as a boy of St. Xavier's who had won the quarter-mile on the flat might take in the praises of his friends. The hills sweated the ghee and sugar suet of his bones, the dry air taken sobbingly at the head of cruel passes firmed and built out his upper ribs, and the tilted levels put new hard muscles into calf and thigh. Oh, hello there, Tahwara. Good evening to you over there. I hope you're doing well and keeping busy with everything going on. It's been a while. But yeah, I hope you're well. Nice to see you, and we'll be getting back to some Gurdjieff texts at some point soon. They meditated often on the wheel of life, the more so since, as the Lama said, they were freed from its visible temptations. Except the grey eagle and an occasional far-seen bear grubbing and rooting on the hillside, a vision of a furious painted leopard met at dawn in a still valley devouring a goat, and now and again a bright-coloured bird, they were alone with the winds and the grass singing under the wind. The women of the smoky huts over whose roofs the two walked as they descended the mountains were unlovely and unclean, wives of many husbands and afflicted with water. The men were woodcutters, and they were not farmers, meek and of an incredible simplicity. But that suitable discourse might not fail. Fate sent them overtaking and overtaken upon the road the courteous Dhaka physician who paid for his food in ointments good for water and counsels that restore peace between men and women. He seemed to know these hills as well as he knew the hill dialects, and gave the Lama the lie of the land towards Ladakh and Tibet. He said they could return to the plains at any moment. Meantime, for such as loved mountains, yonder road might amuse. This was not all revealed in a breath, but at evening encounters on the stone threshing floors, when, patients disposed of, the doctor would smoke and the Lama snuff, while Kim watched the wee cows grazing on the housetops, or threw his soul after his eyes across the deep blue gulfs between range and range. And there were talks apart in the dark woods, when the doctor would seek herbs, and Kim, as budding physician, must accompany him. You see, Mr. O'Hara, I do not know what the deuce and all I shall do when I find our sporting friends, but if you will kindly keep within sight of my umbrella, which is a fine fixed point for cadastral survey, I shall feel much better. Kim looked out across the jungle peaks. This is not my country, Hakim. Easier, I think, to find one louse in a bearskin. Oh, that is my strong points. There is no hurry for hurry. They were at Let not so long ago. They said they had come down from the Karakorum with their heads and horns and all. I am only afraid they will have sent back all their letters and compromising things from Leh into Russian territory. Of course, they will walk away as far to the east as possible, just to show that they were never among the western states. You do not know the hills? He scratched with a twig on the earth. Look, they should have come in by Srinagar and Ablotabad. That is their short road, down the river by Bunji and Astor. But they have made mischief in the west, so he drew a furrow from left to right. They march and they march away, east to Leh. Ah, it is cold there, and down the Indus to Hanli. I know that road, and then down, you see, to Bushar and Chinni Valley. That is ascertained by process of elimination and also by asking questions from people that I cure so well. Our friends have been a long time playing about and producing impressions, so they are well known from far off. You will see me catch them somewhere in Chinni Valley. Please keep your eye on the umbrella. It nodded like a wind-blown hairball down the valleys and round the mountain sides, and in due time the Lama and Kim, who steered by compass, would overhaul it, vending ointments and powders at eventide. We came by such and such a way. The lama would throw a careless finger backward at the ridges, and the umbrella would expend itself in compliments. They crossed a snowy pass in the cold moonlight when the lama, mildly chafing Kim, went through up to his knees like a Bactrian camel, the snow-bred, shag-haired sort that came into the Kashmir Sarai. They dipped across beds of light snow and snow-powdered shale, where they took refuge from a gale, in a camp of Tibetans hurrying down tiny sheep, each laden with a bag of borax. They came out upon grassy shoulders, still snow-speckled, and through forest to grass anew. For all their marchings, Kedarnath and Badrinath were not impressed, and it was only after days of travel that Kim, uplifted upon some insignificant 10,000-foot hummock, could see that a shoulder knot or horn of the two great lords had, ever so slightly, changed outline. At last they entered a world within a world, a valley of leagues where the high hills were fashioned of a mere rubble and refuse from off the knees of the mountains. Here one day's march carried them no farther, it seemed, than a dreamer's clogged pace bears him in a nightmare. They skirted a shoulder painfully for hours, and behold, it was but an outlying boss in an outlying buttress of the main pile. A rounded meadow revealed itself when they had reached it for a vast tableland running far into the valley. 3 days later it was a dim fold in the earth to southward. "Surely the gods live here," said Kim, beaten down by the silence and the appalling sweep and dispersal of the cloud shadows after rain. "This is no place for men." "Long and long ago," said the lama, as to himself, "it was asked of the Lord whether the world were everlasting. On this excellent one returned no answer. When I was in Ceylon, a wise seeker confirmed that from the gospel which is written in Pali, certainly, since we know the way to freedom, the question were unprofitable. But look, and now illusion, Chela. There are the true hills. They are like my hills by such Zen. Never were such hills." Above them, still enormously above them, earth towered away towards the snow line where from east to west, across hundreds of miles, ruled as with a ruler, the last of the bold birches stopped. Above that, in scarps and blocks upheaved, the rocks strove to fight their heads above the white smother. Above these again, changeless since the world's beginning, but changing to every mood of sun and cloud, lay out the eternal snow. They could see blots and blurs on its face where storm and wandering Walliwa got up to dance. Below them, as they stood, the forest slid away in a sheet of blue-green for mile upon mile. Below the forest was a village in its sprinkle of terraced fields and steep grazing grounds. Below the village they knew, though a thunderstorm worried and growled there, for the moment a pitch of 12 or 1,500 feet gave to the moist valley where the streams gather that are the mothers of young Sutluj. As usual, the lama had led Kim by cow track and by road far from the main route, along which Hurry Babu, that fearful man, had bucketed 3 days before through the storm, to which 9 Englishmen out of 10 would have given full right of way. Hurry was no game shot. The snick of a trigger made him change colour, but, as he himself would have said, he was fairly efficient stalker, and he had raked the huge valley with a pair of cheap binoculars to some purpose. Moreover, the white of worn canvas tents against green carries far. Hurry Babu had seen all he wanted to see when he sat on the threshing floor of Ziglar, 20 miles away as the eagle flies, and 40 by road, that is to say, 2 small dots which one day were just below the snow line, and the next had moved downward perhaps 6 inches on the hillside. Once cleaned out and set to the work, his fat bare legs could cover a surprising amount of ground, and this was the reason why, while Kim and the lama lay in a leaky hut at Ziglar till the storm should be overpast, an oily, wet, but always smiling Bengali talking the best of English with the vilest of phrases, was ingratiating himself with two sodden and rather rheumatic foreigners. He had arrived revolving many wild schemes on the heels of a thunderstorm which had split a pine over against their camp, and so convinced a dozen or two forcibly impressed baggage coolies the day was inauspicious for farther travel that with one accord they had thrown down their loads and jibbed. They were subject of a hill Rajah who framed out their services, as is the custom, for his private gain, and to add to their personal distresses, the strange sahibs had already threatened them with rifles. The most of them knew rifles and sahibs of old. They were trackers and shikaris of the northern valleys, keen after bear and wild goat, but they had never been thus treated in their lives. So the forest took them to her bosom, and for all oaths and clamour refused to restore. There was no need to feign madness, or the Babu had thought of another means of securing a welcome. He wrung out his wet clothes, slipped on his patent leather shoes, opened the blue and white umbrella, and with mincing gait and a heart beating against his tonsils, appeared as agent for His Royal Highness the Rajah of Rampur. Gentlemen, what can I do for you, please? The gentlemen were delighted. One was visibly French, the other Russian, but they spoke English, not much inferior to the Babus. They begged his kind offices. Their native servants had gone sick at Leh. They had hurried on because they were anxious to bring the spoils of the chase to Simla ere the skins grew moth-eaten. They bore a general letter of introduction, the Babu salamed to it orientally, to all government officials. No, they had not met any other shooting parties en route. They did for themselves. They had plenty of supplies. They only wished to push on as soon as might be. At this he waylaid a cowering hillman among the trees, and after 3 minutes' talk and a little silver, one cannot be economical upon state service, though Hurri's heart bled at the waist, the 11 coolies and the 3 hangers-on reappeared. At least the Babu would be a witness to their oppression. My royal master, he will be much annoyed, but these people are only common people and grossly ignorant. If your honours will kindly overlook unfortunate affair, I shall be much pleased. In a little while rain will stop, and we can then proceed. You have been shooting, eh? That is a fine performance. He skipped nimbly from one kilter to the next, making pretence to adjust each conical basket. The Englishman is not, as a rule, familiar with the Asiatic, but he would not strike across the wrist a kindly Babu who had accidentally upset a kilter with a red oilskin top. On the other hand, he would not press drink upon a Babu where he never so friendly, nor would he invite him to meat. The strangers did all these things and asked many questions about women mostly, to which Hurry returned gay and unstudied answers. They gave him a glass of whitish fluid like to gin, and then more, and in a little time his gravity departed from him. He became thickly treasonous and spoke in terms of sweeping indecency of a government which had forced upon him a white man's education and neglected to supply him with a white man's salary. He babbled tales of oppression and wrong till the tears ran down his cheeks for the miseries of his land. Then he staggered off, singing love songs of Lower Bengal, and collapsed upon a wet tree trunk. Never was so fortunate a product of English rule in India more unhappily thrust upon aliens. Excuse me. They are all just of that pattern, said one sportsman to the other in French. When we get into India proper, thou wilt see. I should like to visit his Rajah. One might speak the good word there. It is possible that he has heard of us and wishes to signify his goodwill. We have not time. We must get into Simla as soon as may be, his companion replied. For my own part, I wish our reports had been sent back from Hillas or even Leh. The English post is better and safer. Remember, we are given all facilities and name of God. They give them to us too. Is it unbelievably stupidity? Oh, is it unbelievable stupidity? It is pride that deserves and will receive punishment. Yes, to fight a fellow continental in our game is something. There is a risk attached, but these people, bah, it is too easy. Pride, all pride, my friend. Now, what the deuce is good of Chandernagore being so close to Calcutta and all, said Hurry, snoring open-mouthed on the sodden moss, if I cannot understand their French? They talk so particularly fast. It would have been much better to cut their beastly throats. When he presented himself again, he was racked with a headache penitent, volubly afraid that in his drunkenness he might have been indiscreet. He loved the British government. It was the source of all prosperity and honour, and his master at Rampur held the very same opinion. Upon this, the men began to deride him and to quote past words, till step by step, and with deprecating smirks, oily grins, and leers of infinite cunning, the poor Babu was beaten out of his defensives and forced to speak truth. When Lurgan was told the tale later, he mourned aloud that he could not have been in the place of the stubborn, inattentive coolies who, with grass mats over their heads and the raindrops puddling in their footprints, waited on the weather. All the sahibs of their acquaintance, rough-clad men, joyously returning year after year to their chosen gullies, had servants and cooks and orderlies, very often hillmen. These sahibs travelled without any retinue. Therefore they were poor sahibs and ignorant, for no sahib in his senses would follow a Bengali's advice. But the Bengali, appearing from somewhere, had given them money and could make shift with their dialect. Used to comprehensive ill-treatment from their own colour, they suspected a trap somewhere, and stood by to run, if occasion offered. Then through the new washed air, steaming with delicious earth smells, the Babu led the way down the slopes, walking ahead of the coolies in pride, walking behind the foreigners in humility. His thoughts were many and various. The least of them would have interested his companions beyond words, but he was an agreeable guide, ever keen to point out the beauties of his royal master's domain. He peopled the hills with anything they had a mind to slay, thar, ibex, or markhor, a bear by Alicia's allowance. He discoursed of botany and ethnology with unimpeachable accuracy, and his store of local legends — he had been a trusted agent of the state for 15 years, remember — was inexhaustible. Decidedly, this fellow is an original, said the taller of the two foreigners. He is like the nightmare of a Viennese courier. He represents in petto Indian in translation or transition, the monstrous hybridism of East and West, the Russian replied. It is we who can deal with Orientals. He has lost his own country and has not acquired any other, but he has a most complete hatred of his conquerors. Listen, he confided to me last night, said the other. Under the striped umbrella, Hurry Babu was straining ear and brain to follow the quick-poured French and keeping both eyes on a kilta full of maps and documents, an extra large one with a double red oilskin cover. He did not wish to steal anything. He only desired to know what to steal and, incidentally, how to get away when he had stolen it. He thanked all the gods of Hindustan and Herbert Spencer that there remained some valuables to steal. On the second day the road rose steeply to a grass spur above the forest, and it was here, about sunset, that they came across an aged lama. but they called him a bonze, sitting cross-legged above a mysterious chart held down by stones which he was explaining to a young man, evidently a neophyte of singular though unwashen beauty. The striped umbrella had been sighted half a march away, and Kim had suggested a halt till it came upon them. "Ha!" said Hurry Babu, resourceful as Puss in Boots. "That is eminent local holy man, probably subject of my royal master. What is he doing? It is very curious. He is expounding holy picture, all hand-worked." The two men stood bareheaded in the wash of the afternoon sunlight low across the gold-coloured grass. The sullen coolies, glad of the check, halted and slid down their loads. "Look," said the Frenchman, "it is like a picture for the birth of a religion, the first teacher and the first disciple. Is he a Buddhist?" "Of some debased kind," the other answered. "There are no true Buddhists among the hills, but look at the folds of the drapery. Look at his eyes. How insolent. Why does this make one feel that we are so young a people?" The speaker struck passionately at a tall weed. "We have nowhere left our mark yet, nowhere. That, do you understand, is what disquiets me." He scowled at the placid face and the monumental calm of the pose. "Have patience, we shall make your mark together, we and you, young people. Meantime, draw his picture." The Babu advanced loftily, his back out of all keeping with his deferential speech or his wink towards Kim. "Holy One, these be sahibs. My medicines cured one of a flux, and I go into Simla to oversee his recovery. They wish to see thy picture. To heal the sick is always good. This is the wheel of life," said the lama. "The same I showed thee in the hut at Ziglor when the rain fell, and to hear thee expound it." The lama's eyes lighted at the prospect of new listeners. To expound the most excellent way is good. Have they any knowledge of Hindi, such as had the keeper of images? "A little, maybe." Hereat, simply as a child engrossed with a new game, the lama threw back his head and began the full-throated invocation of the doctor of divinity ere he opens the full doctrine. The strangers leaned on their alpenstocks and listened. Kim, squatting humbly, watched the red sunlight on their faces and the blend of parting of their long shadows. They wore un-English leggings and curious girding belts that reminded him hazily of the pictures in a book in St. Xavier's library. The Adventures of a Young Naturalist in Mexico was its name. Yes, they looked very like the wonderful M. Sumirkrast of that tale, and very unlike the highly unscrupulous folk of Hurry Babu's imagining. The coolies, earth-coloured and mute, crouched reverently some 20 or 30 yards away, and the Babu, the slack of his thin gear snapping like a marking flag in the chill breeze, stood by with an air of happy proprietorship. "These are the men," Hurry whispered as the ritual went on and the two whites followed the grass blades sweeping from hell to heaven and back again. "All their books are in the large kilta with the reddish top, books and reports and maps, and I have seen a king's letter that either Hillas or Bunnar has written. They guard it most carefully. They have sent nothing back from Hillas or Leh, that is sure." "Who is with them?" "Only the beggar coolies. They have no servants. They are so close they cook their own food." "But what am I to do?" "Wait and see. Only if any chance comes to me, thou wilt know where to seek for the papers." "This were better in Mahbub Ali's hands than in a Bengali's," said Kim scornfully. "There are more ways of getting to a sweetheart than butting down a wall." "See here the hell appointed for avarice and greed, flanked upon the one side by desire and on the other by weariness." The lama warmed to his work, and one of the strangers sketched him in the quick-fading light. "That is enough," the man said at last brusquely. "I cannot understand him, but I want that picture. He is a better artist than I. Ask him if he will sell it." He says, "No, sir," the Babu replied. The Lama, of course, would no more have parted with his chart to a casual wayfarer than an archbishop would pawn the holy vessels of his cathedral. All Tibet is full of cheap reproductions of the wheel, but the Lama was an artist as well as a wealthy abbot in his own place. Perhaps in 3 days, or 4 or 10, if I perceive that the Sahib is a seeker and of good understanding, I may myself draw him another. But this was used for the initiation of a novice. Tell him so, Hakim. He wishes it now for money. The Lama shook his head slowly and began to fold up the wheel. The Russian, on his side, saw no more than an unclean old man haggling over a dirty piece of paper. He drew out a handful of rupees and snatched half-jestingly at the chart, which tore in the Lama's grip. A low murmur of horror went up from the coolies, some of whom were Spiti men and, by their lights, good Buddhists. The Lama rose at the insult. His hand went to the heavy iron pen case that is the priest's weapon, and the Babu danced in agony. "Now you see why I wanted witnesses. They are highly unscrupulous people. Oh, sir, you must not hit, holy man. Chela, he has defiled the written word." It was too late. Before Kim could ward him off, the Russian struck the old man full on the face. Next instant he was rolling over and over downhill with Kim at his throat. The blow had waked every unknown Irish devil in the boy's blood, and the sudden fall of his enemy did the rest. The Lama dropped to his knees, half-stunned. The coolies, under their loads, fled up the hill as fast as plainsmen run across the level. They had seen sacrilege unspeakable, and it behooved them to get away before the gods and devils of the hills took vengeance. The Frenchman ran towards the Lama, fumbling at his revolver with some notion of making him a hostage for his companion. A shower of cutting stones, hillmen are very straight shots, drove him away, and a coolie from Ao Chung snatched the Lama into the stampede. All came about as swiftly as the sudden mountain darkness. "They have taken the baggage and all the guns," yelled the Frenchman, firing blindly into the twilight. "All right, sir, all right, don't shoot, I go to rescue," said Hurry, pounding down the slope, cast himself bodily upon the delighted and astonished Kim, who was banging his breathless foe's head against the boulder. "Go back to the coolies," whispered the Babu in his ear. "They have the baggage. The papers are in the kilta with the red top. But look through all. Take the papers and especially the murasla, the king's letter. Go, the other man comes." Kim tore uphill. A revolver bullet rang on a rock by his side, and he cowered partridge-wise. "If you shoot," shouted Hurry, "they will descend and annihilate us. I have rescued the gentleman, sir. This is particularly dangerous." "By Jove," Kim was thinking hard in English. "This is damn tight place, but I think it is self-defence." He felt in his bosom for Mahbub's gift, and certainly, save for a few practice shots in the Bikaner desert, he had never used the little gun. Pulled the trigger. "What did I say, sir?" The Babu seemed to be in tears. "Come down here and assist to resuscitate. We are all up a tree, I tell you." The shot ceased. There was a sound of stumbling feet, and Kim hurried upward through the gloom, swearing like a cat or a country bred. "Did they wound thee, Chela?" called the Lama above him. "No. And thou?" He dived into a clump of stunned firs. "Unhurt. Come away. We go with these folk to Shamle under the snow." "But not before we have done justice," a voice cried. "I have got the Sahib's gun. All four. Let us go down." He struck the Holy One. "We saw it. Our cattle will be barren. Our wives will cease to bear. The snows will slide upon us as we go home, atop all the other oppression too." The little fir clump filled with clamouring coolies, panic-stricken, and their terror capable of anything. The man from Ao Chung clicked the breech bolt of his gun impatiently and made as to go downhill. "Wait a little, Holy One. They cannot go far. Wait till I return," said he. "It is this person who has suffered wrong," said the Lama, his hand over his brow. For that very reason, was the reply. If this person overlooks it, your hands are clean. Moreover, ye acquire merit by obedience. Wait, and we will all go to Chambly together, the man insisted. For a moment, for just so long as it needs to stuff a cartridge into a breech loader, the lama hesitated. Then he rose to his feet and laid a finger on the man's shoulder. Hast thou heard? I say there shall be no killing, I who was abbot of such Zen. Is it any lust of thine to be reborn as a rat or a snake under the eaves, a worm in the belly of the most mean beast? Is it thy wish to? The man from Ao Chung fell to his knees, for the voice boomed like a Tibetan devil gong. Aye, aye, cried the spitty men. Do not curse us, do not curse him. It was but his zeal, Holy One. Put down the rifle, fool. Anger on anger, evil on evil, there will be no killing. Let the priest beaters go in bondage to their own acts. Just and sure is the wheel, swerving not a hair. They will be borne many times in torment. His head drooped, and he leaned heavily on Kim's shoulder. I have come near to great evil, Chela, he whispered in that dead hush under the pines. I was tempted to loose the bullets, and truly in Tibet there would have been a heavy and a slow death for them. He struck me across the face, upon the flesh. He slid to the ground, breathing heavily, and Kim could hear the overdriven heart bump and check. Have they hurt him to the death? Said the Ao Chung man, while the others stood mute. Kim knelt over the body in deadly fear. Nay, he cried passionately, this is only a weakness. Then he remembered that he was a white man, with a white man's camp fittings at his service. Open the kiltas, the sahibs may have a medicine. Oh, then I know it, said the Ao Chung man with a laugh. Not for 5 years was I Yankling Sahib's Sikari without knowing that medicine. I too have tasted it. Behold! He drew from his breast a bottle of cheap whisky such as is sold to explorers at Leh, and cleverly forced a little between the lama's teeth. So I did when Yankling Sahib twisted his foot beyond Astor. Aha! I have already looked into their baskets, but we will make fair division at Chambly. Give him a little more. It is good medicine. Feel. His heart goes better now. Lay his head down and rub a little on the chest. If he had waited quietly while I accounted for the sahibs, this would never have come. But perhaps the sahibs may chase us here. Then it would not be wrong to shoot them with their own guns, eh? One is paid, I think, already, said Kim between his teeth. I kicked him in the groin as we went downhill. Would I had killed him. It is well to be brave when one does not live in Rampur, said one whose hut lay within a few miles of the Raja's rickety palace. If we get a bad name among the sahibs, none will employ us as sikaris any more. Oh, but these are not Angrezi sahibs, not merry-minded men like Fostum sahib or Yankling sahib. They are foreigners. They cannot speak Angrezi as do sahibs. Here the lama coughed and sat up, groping for the rosary. There shall be no killing, he murmured. Just is the wheel, evil on evil. Nay, Holy One, we are all here. The Ao Chung man timidly patted his feet. Except by thy order, no one shall be slain. Rest a while. We will make a little camp here, and later, as the moon rises, we go to Chambly under the snow. After a blow, said a spitty man sententiously, it is best to sleep. There is, as it were, a dizziness in the back of my neck, and a pitching in it. Let me lay my head on thy lap, Chela. I am an old man, but not free from passion. We must think of the cause of things. Get him a blanket. We dare not light a fire, lest the sahibs see. Better get away to Chambly. None will follow us to Chambly. This was the nervous Rampur man. I have been Fostum Sahib's shikari, and I am Yankling Sahib's shikari. I should have been with Yankling Sahib now, but for this cursed beggar, the Corvi. Let 2 men watch below with the guns, lest the sahibs do more foolishness. I shall not leave this holy one. They sat down a little apart from the lama and, after listening a while, passed round a water pipe whose receiver was an old Day and Martin blacking bottle. The glow of the red charcoal as it went from hand to hand lit up the narrow blinking eyes, the high Chinese cheekbones, and the bull throats that melted away into the dark duffel folds round the shoulders. They looked like kobolds from some magic mine, gnomes of the hills in conclave, and while they talked, the voices of the snow waters round them diminished one by one, as the night frost choked and clogged the runnels. "How he stood up against us," said a spitty man, admiring. "I remember an old ibex out Ladakh way that Dupont Sahib missed on the shoulder shot 7 seasons back, standing up just like him. Dupont Sahib was a good Sikari." "Not as good as Yankling Sahib." The old Chung man took a pull at the whiskey bottle and passed it over. "Now hear me, unless any other man thinks he knows more." The challenge was not taken up. "We go to Shamley when the moon rises. There we will fairly divide the baggage between us. I am content with this new little rifle, and all its cartridges." "Are the bears only bad on thy holding?" said a mate, sucking at the pipe. "No, but musk pods are worth 6 rupees apiece now, and thy women can have the canvas of the tents and some of the cooking gear. We'll do all that at Shamley before dawn. Then we all go our ways, remembering that we have never seen or taken service with these sahibs, who may indeed say that we have stolen their baggage." "That is well for thee, but what will our Rajah say?" "Who is to tell him? Those sahibs who cannot speak our talk, or the Babu, who for his own ends gave us money? Will he lead an army against us? What evidence will remain? That we do not need, we shall throw on Shamley Midden, where no man has yet set foot." "Who is at Shamley this summer?" The place was only a grazing centre of 3 or 4 huts. "The woman of Shamley, she has no love for sahibs, as we know. The others can be pleased with little presents, and here is enough for us all." He patted the fat sides of the nearest basket. But, I have said they are not true sahibs. All their skins and heads were bought in the bazaar at Leh. I know the marks. I showed them to ye last March." "True, they were all bought skins and heads. Some had even the moth in them." That was a shrewd argument, and the old Chung man knew his fellows. "If the worst comes to the worst, I shall tell Yankling Sahib, who is a man of a merry mind, and he will laugh. We are not doing any wrong to any sahibs whom we know. They are priest-beaters. They frightened us. We fled. Who knows where we dropped the baggage? Do ye think Yankling Sahib will permit down-country police to wander all over the hills, disturbing his game? It is a far cry from Simla to Chinni, and farther from Shamley to Shamley Midden. So be it, but I carry the big kilta, the basket with the red top that the sahibs pack themselves every morning." "Thus it proved," said the Shamley man adroitly, "that they are sahibs of no account. Who ever heard of Futsum Sahib or Yankling Sahib, or even the little Peel Sahib that sits up of nights to shoot serau? I say, who ever heard of these sahibs coming into the hills without a down-country cook and a bearer and all manner of well-paid, high-handed and oppressive folk in their tail? How can they make trouble? What of the kilta? Nothing but that is full of the written word, books and papers in which they wrote in strange instruments as of worship. Shamley Midden will take them all. True, but how if we insult the sahibs' gods thereby? I do not like to handle the written word in that fashion, and their brass idols are beyond my comprehension. It is no plunder for simple hill folk. The old man still sleeps. We will ask his chela." The Ao Chung man refreshed himself and swelled with pride of leadership. "We have here," he whispered, "a kilta whose nature we do not know." "But I do," said Kim cautiously. The lama drew breath in natural, easy sleep, and Kim had been thinking of Huri's last words. As a player of the great game, he was disposed just then to reverence Babu. It is kilta with a red top full of very wonderful things not to be handled by fools. I said it, cried the bearer of that burden. Thinkest thou it will betray us? Not if it be given to me. I can draw out its magic, otherwise it will do great harm. A priest always takes his share. Whiskey was demoralizing the Ao Chung man. It is no matter to me, Kim answered with the craft of his mother country. Share it among you, and see what comes. Not I was only jesting. Give the order. There is more than enough for all of us. We go our way from Shamlay in the dawn. They arranged and rearranged their artless little plans for another hour while Kim shivered with cold and pride. The humour of the situation tickled the Irish and the Oriental in his soul. Here were the emissaries of the dread power of the North, very possibly as great in their own land as Mahbub or Colonel Creighton, suddenly smitten helpless. One of them, he privately knew, would be lame for a time. They had made promises to kings. Tonight they lay out somewhere below him, chartless, floodless, foodless, tentless, gunless, except for Huri Babu, guideless. And this collapse of their great game, Kim wondered to whom they would report it. This panicky bolt into the night had come about through no craft of Huri's or contrivance of Kim's, but simply, beautifully and inevitably, as the capture of Mahbub's fakir friends by the zealous young policeman at Umballa. They are there with nothing, and by Jove, it is cold. I am here with all their things. Oh, they will be angry. I am sorry for Huri Babu. Kim might have saved his pity, for thought at that moment the Bengali suffered acutely in the flesh. His soul was puffed and lofty. A mile down the hill on the edge of the pine forest, two half-frozen men, one powerfully sick at interviews, were varying mutual recriminations with the most poignant abuse of the Babu, who seemed distraught with terror. They demanded a plan of action. He explained that they were lucky to be alive, that their coolies, if not then stalking them, had passed beyond recall, that the Rajah, his master, was 90 miles away, and so far from lending them money and a retinue for the Simla journey, would surely cast them into prison if he heard that they had hit a priest. He enlarged on this sin and its consequences till they bade him change the subject. Their one hope, said he, was unostentatious flight from village to village till they reached civilization, and for the 100th time, dissolved in tears, he demanded of the high stars why the sahibs had beaten holy man. 10 steps would have taken Huri into the creaking gloom utterly beyond their reach, to the shelter and food of the nearest village, where glib-tongued doctors were scarce. But he preferred to endure cold, belly-pinch, bad words, and occasional blows in the company of his honoured employers. Crouched against a tree trunk, he sniffed dolefully. "And have you thought," said the uninjured man hotly, "what sort of spectacle we shall present wandering through these hills among these aborigines?" Huri Babu had thought of little else for some hours, but the remark was not to his address. "We cannot wonder. I can hardly walk," groaned Kim's victim. "Perhaps the holy man will be merciful in loving kindness, sir. Otherwise, I promise myself a peculiar pleasure in emptying my revolver into that young bronze when we next meet," was the unchristian answer. "Revolvers, vengeance, bronzes?" Hurry crouched lower. The war was breaking out afresh. "Have you no consideration for our loss? The baggage. He could hear the speaker literally dancing on the grass. "Everything we bore, everything we have secured, our gains, 8 months' work. Do you know what that means? Decidedly it is we who can deal with Orientals. Oh, you have done well." They fell to it in several tongues, and Huri smiled. Kim was with the Kiltars, and in the Kiltars lay 8 months of good diplomacy. There was no means of communicating with the boy, but he could be trusted. For the rest, Hurry could so stage manage the journey through the hills that Hillas, Bunnar, and 400 miles of roads should tell the tale for a generation. Men who cannot control their own coolies are little respected in the hills, and the hillman has a very keen sense of humour. If I had done it myself, thought Hurry, it would not have been better, and by Jove, now I think of it, of course I arranged it myself. How quick I have been! Just when I ran downhill I thought it. The outrage was accidental, but only me could have worked it. Ah, for all it was damn well worth. Consider the moral effect upon these ignorant peoples. No treaties, no papers, no written documents at all, and me to interpret for them. How I shall laugh with the colonel. I wish I had their papers also, but you cannot occupy two places in space simultaneously. That is axiomatic. And so, if you're interested and enjoying that, we'll be back tonight for chapter 14 and probably finish it maybe Wednesday evening. A little bonus read to finish Kim, and then we can move on to new pages, new written words as we learn in that chapter. But everyone, thanks for watching and listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share with your like-minded friends. But for now, I'll say thanks for joining. I hope you enjoyed chapter 13. We'll be back again. Look after yourselves, take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye now.